Hello, class. Hope you're doing well still. Happy, healthy, safe, sound, you and your loved ones. Today, we're going to talk about public opinion and why it matters and how you find out what people think. So, let's start with the easiest definition of this semester. Probably the easiest definition we'll have. Public opinion is essentially what people think about what's going on. So, to get a little bit more precise, public opinion is people's opinion on the salient actors and policies and events of the moment, the day. To put that a third way, so remember, salient means it's important in the sense that it sticks out. Public opinion is asking people what they think about what's going on. So you all are doing it right with your with this class. You're letting me know what you think in many cases about what's going on. So public opinion is trying to capture. So public opinion in terms of this lecture is we're trying to decide how do we capture that. How, in other words, people think what they think, whatever it is. How do we find it out accurately? Because finding out what's going on in someone else's head is not easy, especially when it's strangers, especially when it's politics. So, how can you trust polls, which are, and this is your next keyword, so public opinion, super easy, right? What people think about the salient issues and actors of the day. I think that'll be my fourth and final definition, if you want that one. What people think about the salient issues and actors of the day. And when we say actors, as much as I love them, it doesn't mean Denzel and it doesn't mean, right, or Will Smith. It means politicians. It means people in power, right? So for this class, when you hear issues and actors of the day, you should think, what's going on? Okay. Coronavirus, Black Lives Matter, current events. So you got to call people on the phone. So you got that first definition, right? Public opinion, polls. How do we find it out? And that's the answer is a poll. So POLL, and I know it's confusing if you're just taking politics for the first time in a while, especially. The word poll is used twice. There are two meanings for the word poll as in politics. One is you go vote at the polls, and the other one is a public opinion poll. So what we're talking about today is the public opinion poll, and let's put it for a sociologist. This is a word they might use more often. A survey. Survey. So you're taking a survey of what people think, right? Why? Okay, so we've got it. Okay, Professor V, we get what public opinion. Who cares? Why do we learn about it, especially for this class? And here's the answer. It matters 1,000,000% to politicians. Why? Because politicians have to get elected. And if they don't listen to public opinion, they're not going to get elected again, right? It's that simple. So public opinion, and it's not public opinion isn't always right. Just to be clear, if the public opinion of the South was measured, during pre-Civil War, that it would have been horribly racist views. So capturing public opinion can be nasty. You can find out some things. But it's especially hard today to capture public opinion because no one really wants people to spam them, right? Not everyone really wants to talk to a stranger. Not everyone really wants to talk politics. I do. I've always waited for the call, but most people don't. Most people will hang up, right? So we've got the idea that public opinion is important because what people think, oh look, Black Lives Matter. Right now, I was surprised by this. Donald Trump signed an executive order, and you could argue that it wasn't far enough, but he signed an executive order that banned many, some would say most, chokeholds. So now that I saw on the news today someone in NYPD using a chokehold, they're now violating a presidential order. What made President Trump go from law and order president to signing a law that limits police? I'll tell you what it is. It's people on the streets. It is Americans and people of all colors, of all backgrounds, everybody. That whether you agree or not, I hope you agree with Black Lives Matter, but whether you agree or not, the president, Trump, he had to listen to the people, right? What else would move him to do that when, if you look at his language, the last time I heard him talk to the police union or the police consortium, he was saying, this a couple maybe years ago now, like a year or two ago, oh yeah, you guys, you shouldn't be so easy, pushing their heads in gently when you put them in the car, don't be afraid to, essentially rough them up. You can go look up the exact quote. So you go from that Trump to a Trump signing something that's, I would argue, from what I can tell, I can't judge a person's heart. I'm not so sure that Trump is convinced of the issue, but he's forced to be convinced by people in the streets. Does that make sense? And I want to be clear. I don't mean angry, violent people in the streets, because I think that's like 1% or less. First off, I think we have to acknowledge some facts, right? Unbelievably small percentage of people. And protesting is a First Amendment right. You got to love it. The founders didn't even put it second, third, fourth. No, right up front. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, boom, freedom of assembly, freedom to peacefully protest and ask your government to address grievances. A grievance, I don't know if you'll like Pearl Jam or if you even know who they are. If you're a patriot, a heart like old fashioned, maybe you might not like this, but they had this song where they said, "I pledge my grievance to the flag." And what they were saying was, a grievance is why people are out in the street. Yeah, George Floyd counterfeited a $20 bill, but a human being is worth $20? That's a profound. So why am I saying all this? Because people saw what happened to George Floyd. They knew it wasn't right. They knew it was murder, and they saw it by a cop. Again, to an unarmed African American person of color who doesn't have any weapons. It's heartbreaking, but here's the hope you can take in it, is that people's opinion does matter in a democracy. It does. You may lose hope at times. You're not going to get what exactly you want probably the first time of trying if you're in a movement like this, but politicians have to listen. Politicians, I've never had a semester where there's never been a better example. Politicians have to care what people think about this issue. They have to. Or do you want to get reelected? Now, if Trump was in his second term, he doesn't really have to care. But like everyone in Congress, in every 2 years in the House, every 6 in the Senate, that's up for reelection has to care. And the president is up for reelection, so he has to care. So does that make sense? Public opinion matters. It matters so much. How do we capture it? We capture it through polls or surveys, but we're going to call them polls because we're in the politics, right? So what I want to just teach you is briefly, how do you know a poll is accurate? I'll tell you this first of all. No poll should claim or can claim accurately to be 100% true, 100% accurate. Why? Because we're not math. We use math, but we're not science. We're not 1 + 1 = 2. There's gray area because you're dealing with human beings and you're dealing with asking them a question and the possibility that they might lie or misunderstand or any host of other problems. So let's go through the list And what I want to teach you all is just basically, how do you know a good poll, and honestly good science, because a good poll is good mathematical science, right? Statistical science, if you will. How do you know when a poll is legit? Okay, and that's how many people honestly support Black Lives Matter. It's not just a number, 72%, or whatever the number is. How do you know that that's actually is? How do you know it's not 80% or 82 or 43 or 98? How do you know when you hear this many percent of people? God bless you if you love TikTok, but it's going to be hard to verify on there if you see, well, 90% of people don't support this or do. How do you know that's true? And it's important, like, even if you agree with something, right? You want to know if the poll regarding the issue you care about is accurate, because you really want to know how many Americans, how many people that they're polling actually do agree. So, how do we find that out truthfully? It is difficult. It's not 100%, but we can get really, really close. Okay. And I will say this, my 13-year-old daughter, she gives me the hardest time still because, and I didn't endorse nor would I in any shape, way, or form either major party candidate, but she asked me what I thought, who is going to win. You're the almost doctor political scientist, dad. Who do you think is going to win? Not who do I want to win, not who I'm invested in winning, not who, just who do I think is going to win objectively? And I thought it was going to be Hillary Clinton, and I thought it would probably be by a fair amount, and it was been the popular vote, but the states that she lost were really surprising to me, like Florida, because she outspent Donald Trump in Florida about 2 to 1. If you think about that in millions of dollars, you're talking about, 400, million dollars to 200 million, something in that range, perhaps. 20 million to 10 million. I mean, anything in the millions where you're getting spent 2 to 1. She lost those states, and so people like me who weren't taking sides in the election, even, they're just like looking at it objectively because we're nerds and we love to just try to predict it. It's like if you love a team but they're playing against another team that you can't stand and you really want one team to win, but you got to block that out and just look at, like, be the referee, So how did they get it wrong? I'll tell you right now up front, because I'm about to try to teach you what reliable polls are. I can tell you where in states like Florida, where Hillary Clinton spent more, and so a lot of people thought that would contribute to her may potentially winning, which she didn't, that state. But at the end of the day, the question was, just by spending money, are you going to win? Or is it an issue of, you have to remember, we're talking about public opinion. You have to bring people along board. And so a lot of the people that said they were going to vote for Hillary Clinton actually voted for Donald Trump. So I'm going to tell you something interesting. The political scientists don't know the percentage, but there's a substantial amount of people, and it could be 1%. In a state like Florida, it's so close. Or Ohio or Michigan was less than 10,000 votes. When Hillary Clinton lost Michigan, I was like, dude, she lost the election. And my daughter's like, you were wrong, Dad. Even though she wanted a woman to win. And independently from politics, I have always wanted that as well. Again, I'm not endorsing a candidate. So my daughter, she's like, Dad, you got it wrong. How'd you guys get it wrong? How did political scientists get it wrong? People way smarter than me got it wrong. But the margin of error is one huge reason, and that's not to excuse them. If you want to write this in your notes here, making a list of what's an accurate poll look like, it's in no particular order. You need all of these things, but you need a margin of error. You need to express that margin of error. It's also called a confidence interval if you've taken statistics. If this is making no sense to you, think about it like this. We think that, Hillary Clinton is going to win Michigan 49% to 47%, and the other percents go to small parties. The 49 to 47 say. So she's going to win by 2 percentage points, which would be like hundreds of thousands of votes maybe. But wait, is that poll wrong? Because she didn't win Michigan. She lost by 10,000. The poll, this sounds weird, but listen, the poll is not wrong if it says margin of error plus or minus, say, 3 points or 5 points. Why? Because they're saying that's within our range. We admitted that could have happened. Yes, she's polling 2 points ahead, but there's a 5-point margin of error. Does that make sense? That means if she's polling 2 points ahead, she may actually be 7 points ahead, or she could be 3 points behind. It's plus or minus 5. So that by the way, that's the sort of scientific standard you can expect most of the time. It doesn't always have to be. But if someone says there's no confidence interval, in other words, there's no margin of error whatsoever, it's baloney. It's nonsense. It's a lie, because everything in social science, political science, has to have a margin of error because people lie or other factors. So what I was going to say earlier was there's a lot of evidence to show that there was a small enough percentage of people who, look, they just, for whatever reason, didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton, and were kind of, and this was historic in this election, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump got most of their votes from voters, listen to this, who were voting because they hated the other candidate. They didn't say hate, but in other words, the number one reason that people voted for Trump was because they didn't like Hillary Clinton. The number one reason that people voted for Hillary Clinton was they didn't like Donald Trump. It's essentially the two most unpopular candidates in American history since we've been doing these polls. That's crazy, right? It's crazy. So it was a wild election. Public opinion has to have a margin of error, and it was a wild election in part because the polls were showing Hillary Clinton ahead, right? But it turns out there's enough people, and if it's Michigan, it's within 10,000 votes out of millions. In the United States, 120 million votes cast in a given election. This next one, I would say maybe 120 million. To come down to 10,000 votes in one state is unbelievably close. That's unbelievably close if you think about that. Out of 100 million votes, 10,000. My math isn't that good, but I think that's 1% or less. So did social scientists get it wrong? They did and they didn't, right? Because if there's that margin of error there, they're saying there's enough people that they really just couldn't stomach telling a stranger that they were going to vote for Donald Trump. And look, if you're a Donald Trump supporter, that's fine. But maybe somebody sees the Access Hollywood tape and says it's outrageous for somebody who's going to run for president to advocate and brag for sexual assault, and so you just can't vote for that person. Then even if you didn't like Hillary Clinton, now you're voting for, or there were people on the Donald Trump side who are like, well, Hillary Clinton has done, emails and is untrustworthy, is a true politician, not genuine, And you'll see a lot of that in the election. With Biden and with Trump, you're going to see that it's like, who do I hate less right now is who people are voting for. I'm laughing because it's kind of sad, isn't it? But that's the reality. And so I maybe digress, but the polls show us one thing, a margin of error. And within that margin of error, you're admitting that, yeah, it could go within plus or minus 5%. And in a close election, that's going to happen every time, just about within the margin of error. And these swing states that we talked about, the purple states, like Michigan, like Florida, like Ohio, Okay, so number two, when you do a poll, let's get to kind of back to the beginning. You need to, number two, you need a question or questions that have a couple of simple things. Number one, they are simple enough for a normal average person to understand. Someone who doesn't do politics all the time, someone who isn't a nerd like me and loves politics, someone who doesn't really know about it, and you just want to know the average American what voter is usually what you're trying to express. If for the case of this lecture, right? And sometimes it isn't just a voter, so it could be anyone in anywhere. But you're trying to capture, for say that what does the American voter think? It's unbelievably important that the question be simple and straightforward so the average person can understand it. So that's first. Why? Because if you start asking, you know, in this survey, I'd like to ask you, this is an easy one, then I'll give you a hard one. Do you approve or disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing as president? Easy, right? Simple, easy, straightforward. You either have yes or no. Do you agree with the United States unilateral withdrawal from the WHO, especially considering the global nature of the coronavirus pandemic? The average person, not you all, but the average person might get lost. Okay, they might not honestly follow along. You start talking about NATO and the United Nations and other things that are or complex economic questions about progressive and regressive taxes. You ask average people that, it's one of two things is going to happen. Either they have absolutely no idea what you said and they just like, I don't know, and they say, so for that answer there's no response. Or maybe we've all been here at a time, you feel embarrassed that you don't know, so you just say an answer. You're like, yes, no. And you don't know what the NATO alliance was about and what Trump's tariffs are exactly with China. You're not sure what that means, but you don't want to sound stupid because you're a human being and you might get embarrassed if you just said, I don't know. Other people are like, dude, I'm confident enough to say I don't know and I don't care, or whatever. Does that make sense? So you have to have questions that are simple enough that everyone can understand so that you don't have that problem. All right. The second part of this second part is you have to have a question that's fair and unbiased, unprejudiced. It doesn't lead you in a direction. It isn't trying to make you say something by the way it's phrased. For example, the comedian Stephen Colbert, he used to say, joking, like sarcastically, but it's hilarious. He would say, he'd put people in this position on his show. He'd say, George W. Bush, great president or the greatest president? So you're, and then he would ask politicians questions like, if you have to take cocaine or heroin, which would you do? And they're like, why am I forced into this choice? And so comedically it can be funny, but in all seriousness, if you force someone into a question, like, don't you think Trump's doing a bad job? Don't you think Trump's doing a good job? Whatever you're trying, that first of all, you can't lead into a question like that, right? You can, but it's not a survey. It's not a poll. It's not legit. It's going to be not helpful and not scientific and not accurate. Does that make sense? Boom. You got it. So simple question, unbiased. Don't lead them. Don't lead someone somewhere and be like, now I do this with my young one, my 4-year-old, right? I'll be like, don't you want to eat your vegetables? Don't you love broccoli, right? But you can't do that in a survey, in all seriousness. So number 3, this one's super important. Need to ask randomly. You need to ask randomly. So number 3, random. When you're polling people, you cannot just go, and I'll use this analogy. So say you're a Lakers fan, right? And you want to do a survey. You want to find out how many other Lakers fans there are at Long Beach City College. Or maybe let's just do all Long Beach so we get a little bit bigger population, okay? If you really want to find out, is this the best way to go about it? To go, if you want to find out who in our city loves the Lakers, and who hates them? It's either yes or no. You love them or hate them, right? If I want to go, and I do, but the way I take about the survey, and I want to find out honestly who feels this way. But I'm a Lakers fan, and maybe this makes me feel a little differently. So I decide I'm going to go to everyone that I see in Long Beach with a Lakers jersey on, and those will be the people I ask the question to. Those will be the people I ask the question, are the Lakers the greatest team? Yes or no? Do you love them or hate them? Okay, stay with me. It's absurd, right? For me, it would be my little faded here, Mexico, or LA, a club team, LA Galaxy, right? Chicharito. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to play for a while, but you're supporting something, and if you go to everyone else that supports that same thing and ask them, do you support this? You already know based on their jersey they do. If I go to everyone and, on a whatever jersey, a LA Galaxy jersey, say, do you love the LA Galaxy? Well, now it actually may not even be 100%, right? It may be like maybe 10% people that they actually don't love the Lakers. They are wearing it because it's the only thing they have to wear. And they hate the Lakers, but that's just all they have. And maybe there's people who are wearing it because it's comfortable and it looks cool, but they actually hate the Lakers. Or they're wearing it because they had a bet that if the Lakers won a game, they'd have to wear a Lakers jersey. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? But most of the people that are wearing it because they think the Lakers are awesome. So if you go ask them, who do you think is the awesomest team? And you're asking everyone in a Lakers jersey, you're not learning anything, right? So the example I have is this is why I give this lecture now. When I first started teaching college in 2007, by 2008, there were papers about Proposition 8, and Proposition 8 was a prop in California. This might be shocking to some of you who don't know this, but first of all, a yes vote meant yes, you want to ban gay marriage. And so 52% of Californians said yes, they wanted to ban gay marriage, and 48, this was in 2008, and 48% said no, they didn't want to ban gay marriage. So what yes was, if you're saying yes to Prop 8, you were saying yes, you wanted to add a constitutional amendment to California to prohibit same-sex marriage. Californians voted that in 2008. Then later, remember, the Supreme Court rules, and other courts before that, other federal courts had ruled. But that's, first of all, that's just think about that in terms of, is it appropriate to have an election where the potential rights of the minority are decided by the potential will of the majority? Does that make sense? In other words, it goes back to that example. You have an election in the South in the 1800s, and you ask, should we keep slavery or not? That the answer you get is going to be racist and wrong. And just because it got voted in, don't make it right. It doesn't. It isn't. It can't be. It's not. And it ain't. And I'm getting fired up. It ain't never gonna be, because it's not just. So let's get back to our survey. In all seriousness, with the Lakers jersey, I hope that makes sense. But going back, I got sidetracked. Prop 8. Hey, I do this at times. I'm only human. Sorry. Prop 8. It got me sidetracked because we were talking about people directly voting on someone else's rights, right? So whatever you think about that, Prop 8 was voted on, and people were writing papers about it, right? Before it was voted on, and because, research paper, it's good for you. So I had 2 papers from 2 different people from 2 different classes that wrote on the same topic, because I allow people to choose their own topic, and I think that's important. So within the framework of, the class, and so both people chose to write about Prop 8, and one person was for banning gay marriage, and the other person was for legalizing gay marriage. And again, they don't know each other. They don't even know that they're writing the same paper topic as each other. But one person in the first paper or second, I mean, it wouldn't matter which order we go in, but the first paper, say, was the one that was for gay marriage, which would be no to Prop 8, because no means you don't want to prohibit same-sex marriage. No, you don't want to amend the Constitution to ban it. I know it's confusing, right? Some people said it was on purpose, but I don't know. But here's what I do know. Someone in my class says, well, and they found this. It wasn't their fault because I didn't teach them it yet. You know, they didn't know this. They looked at a poll that said, 90% of Californians support gay marriage legality, and so marriage equality. And so they put this in their research paper. And I thought, man, that's a really, really high number. Like you could expect, I was expecting maybe 60%, 55%. It actually ended up being 48%. But the person had 90%. And then, so pause there, right? Over the other paper 2. They were against gay marriage. And they were saying, it's not traditional, blah, whatever their other arguments were. But they based this argument and they said virtually the exact same thing, but opposite. 90% of Californians are against gay marriage. And I'm thinking the same thing I'm thinking when I'm reading this one. 90% anything is way too high. What do you mean, Professor E? 90% of Americans barely agree the sky's blue. I mean, I'm not really joking. So when I heard 90%, I thought there's some things that are 90% of people against murder. Yeah. But we're talking about political things. Like gay marriage is a very, potentially divisive issue because there are conservative people who just don't agree with it. And the progressive people are like, how is it your business? And how is it the government's, especially? So we had this clash, and 2 people were writing. To be fair, I believe they were both respectful papers, but they were completely different, opposite sides of the view. And they both said, roughly 90% of Californians were for, and then 90% were against. And what I did was I ended up looking at their sources. And again, I don't blame them. They got tricked by, and I don't even know that the polls intentionally were trying to deceive people even, but both sides had gone to websites that were interest groups which is like a group that supports your side. They went to everyone in a Lakers jersey and asked them, what do you think of the Lakers? They didn't know they were doing it. They didn't realize, but by going to this website, like if I go to the Lakers website and they have a poll, who's the best team in the NBA? I promise you, I've never been on Lakers website, but I promise you if they have that, the Lakers are going to be the number 1 team. Why? Because people who go to the Lakers website are obviously predisposed to either really, really hate them, and that's why they're piquing their interest, or they like them, right? Does that make sense? And so the 2 polls that they mentioned were people that were already, hardcore for it, hardcore against it. And they were asking those people with the Lakers jerseys on, are you a fan? Yeah, I'm a fan. That's why I'm wearing the jersey. That's why I'm in the group, right? And so they didn't realize that's a fun snapshot to just, it doesn't mean anything scientifically, right? Because at the end of the day, the vote count was different. It wasn't even close to either of those numbers. It never was going to be. It's just that those websites were not choosing random people. People were going to that website on purpose and specifically, and only certain people go to certain websites for different reasons. If you support something, you would go to that website, right? So it would make sense that Lakers jersey, right? Analogy again. Okay, you get it. Last but not least, and I may add another, but this is really important. You're going to see TV, and I might be a little harsh here, but pick on the Dr. Oz's and Dr. Phil's. I don't know them per se, but you'll see studies promoted on TV. I've seen studies where the science is really, and the math is really sketchy, shall we say. In other words, let me give you an example of where you could be easily misled by a study and they're not going to actually lie to you. Just like, you know, the 90%, 90%, but this is more, this is a different one. Okay, so imagine you have a coin. Someone have a coin here. No one has coins anymore. Okay, so you get a coin. It has a heads. It has a tails. Okay, stay with me because this is where a bad garbage study is going to trick a lot of people potentially. This idea. Ready? So you got a heads and tails coin. Everyone can see I'm not David Blaine. I can't do magic. I flip it and boom, you know, hey, it's heads. Oh my goodness. I have now proved in my study that 100% of the time this coin turns heads. What? Wait, let's try that again. I flip the coin once, I get it, and I show the coin, and everyone says, "Yay, you've done it, and you've proved something." And all the people are cheering for me, work for me, and they're saying, "Yay, we've proved this scientific study." And what have we actually said? We haven't. What we said is 100% of the time in our study, this thing happened. Whoa, 100%. That must be amazing. What they didn't tell you is they only flipped the coin one time. So stay with me. Flip the coin twice, what's going to happen? You may even get heads twice. You could, right? I mean, it's happened. So let's get a real coin. Make this better. 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Stay with me. If you flip the coin enough times, what is going to be the mathematical result? What is the honest answer that the people should tell you in that study if they're really studying how many times a quarter flips to heads? This quarter, which is equal to all quarters everywhere, heads and tails. This one only goes to heads, and they're trying to sell you on that. They're not lying if they say that 100% of the time in their study it went heads. If they only did it once, that's 100%, right? If they did it twice and it did it, that's 100%. But so they're not lying, but is that accurate? No, it's garbage, right? So here's what you need, and this is what you should write down. Sorry for the coin flipping, and it's a lot better with a real coin, I bet. But here's the analogy, right? You ask one person, you flip the coin once, you ask one person what they think of Trump. Do you honestly get a picture of what America thinks of Trump? No. You've got to ask thousands of people. How do you know what percentage of people support Black Lives Matter? You don't find out by asking one person. You have to ask thousands of people. And then you find out, oh, okay, the rising movement here, and you can compare it. But just so you know, the mathematical sort of bottom line is going to be 120 people. You don't want to, there's going to be things where you can, if you want to interview one person like a president and just learn a lot about them, but that's not so much a poll anymore, right? That's a case study. So a poll, it's important where you don't get bogged down in trying to ask 3 people, what do you think of Trump? Because what if you ask, say, 2 people, right? And one loves Trump and one hates Trump. Well, that may be the case in America, but it might be 40-60 or 60-40. Or I think Trump is at 46% is the highest approval rating he's had as president, 46%. Among reliable polls. How do you know they're reliable, Professor V? Because I'm checking all the stuff that we've just been going over, right? How many times have they flipped the coin? How many people have they asked the question to, right? So you're not going to everyone in a Lakers jersey. Now you're going to everyone in Long Beach. And you're not just going to one block of Long Beach. You're going to random spots. Random spots. As random as humanly possible. Basically, you're getting a piece of the puzzle from everywhere. What is everyone in the country? So if you'll see polls, and this is a little something you should look for the rest of your life. When you're looking at a poll and you want to know, is it accurate? Here's what you're going to need to see for sure. You're going to see a link with all the stuff I just told you, a margin of error. How many people did we call? Randomly selected. from these places, from these cities. And then I think I might be accidentally lying here. I think I said I was done, but I'm going to add one more. Is how do you get a hold of people? Well, you can tell by what I've said so far. Internet polls are unbelievably unreliable. I actually say believably unreliable now that you know, right? They're not reliable for a lot of reasons. First of all, access to the internet, but more than that, it's because how do you get onto the survey site? How do you know to get onto it? You might be predisposed to get onto it based on being heavily into politics, and the average person isn't heavily into politics. So the average person needs to get a phone call. Okay, so that's what I was going to put as our last one. Sorry for adding one last one. You're going to get a phone call on either one of two things, and you all know one of them probably, but maybe not the other. I don't know. I have one and not the other. A cell phone or a landline. And that actually captures about 95% of Americans. 95% of people who live in America are able to be reached either through a landline or a cell phone that are of voting age. That's impressively high, almost 95%. So you've got now, what about back when there was no cell phone or even phone? Well, you're going door to door. You're knocking door to door. Can you do that today? First of all, not with the virus. I think it's going to change everything forever, right? I mean, not to be a damper, but going up to people's houses. I remember before getting Grubhub, and I had to run out and get some medicine for my son with him because he was having an allergy attack, and I just forgot it that I even ordered the food, and someone just calling me, and I'm like, dude, I got to get Benadryl. And it was like the Grubhub, they wouldn't leave, they just left. They wouldn't leave the food on the ground. And now they only leave it on the ground. So it's just, I think that, and that's, I guess, another good point I could sort of tangent off. Public opinion changes all the time, right? So when you see polls, you're going to need to see all of the things that we've said, and usually there'll be a link, right? And it'll say, click here for survey methodology, not methodology, which means how did you do the study? It's everything we just said, right? Now, how many people did I ask? From where did I ask? And, again, going back door to door, you're not going to be able to do that much more these days. You're not going to have a lot of people filling out paper mail, although sometimes they do. I've gotten them in the mail before where for Nielsen ratings, which is like, mostly TV and radio type of stuff. And they'll send you, if you might get lucky one day, they'll send you a dollar bill, like some like most crisp, I don't think crispest is a word, the most crisp dollar bill you've ever seen, and a little survey like, what do we like to watch? And then if you send it back, you keep the dollar bill, and there's no postage at all. You just stick it in the, mailbox or whatever, and then when they send it back to you, once they get it, they'll send you back a $5 bill, like just a crisp $5 bill. So what are we saying? Do you incentivize a survey? Yes. If you're going to call someone on the phone, before they immediately hang up in your face, you might offer them a $10 gift card or $20 gift card to Amazon, right? Or to Target or something like that. Does that make sense? But you don't want to get into the process of giving thousands of dollars for, first of all, you're not going to, as a research company, maybe be able to afford it. The research entity through a university, certainly, maybe a big corporation, but, these things can be costly and time consuming. So you go by the phone, it's a lot easier, a lot faster. And nowadays between cell phone and landline, you can gather, not everyone, but a really large majority of who will be the voting public. And for this election coming up, like right now, it looks like Biden has a lead. So my daughter was asking me, do you think Biden's going to win? And I said, well, I'm looking at the polls in these swing states, and it looks like he has a big lead. But That's what we said, and I say we, political scientists, said about Hillary Clinton. So again, it has nothing to do with voting for the person or taking sides, because I take neither side. Um, but it's just fascinating to see how big this election is, and public opinion is going to play a huge role. And last but not least, if I couldn't find a better way to sum it up, the reason this all matters is because you and I vote, right? You vote, and so when you vote, you pressure politicians. And if the politicians know that, 65% of the country is like 100% with the Black Lives Matter movement, then as a politician, you have to listen to the will of the people, right? And that's part of democracy. So public opinion captures that. And if you do it the way we said, the methodology we said, it captures it accurately. All right, let's leave it there. Till next time, everyone, God bless, all the best. Stay safe.